I normally try to avoid getting political on this channel. But some things in the news just affect everyone, and that includes Christians. That's not really being addressed in the media. One of these things was actually raised to me not by any Christian radio station, but by Jonathan Pye, who is what I think of as a comedy news journalist. He clearly pays attention to the news and just, on occasion, lets rip. It's not making up rubbish for the sake of comedy. He's basically just being plain and honest about his opinions on the news. So, what was this thing I'm talking about? It's the so-called cancel culture. Jonathan Pye says that if you deny there's a culture war or deny there's a cancel culture, then you basically say, yes, it's true, and you're just confirming it. Which probably isn't too far off. Certainly, the people who don't realise they're in a cult are often the ones that are in the cult. Whether this cancel culture can be considered cultic is less than certain. But when you get right down to it, when the fact that people get offended becomes a near criminal offence, that people expressing their opinions becomes preferably illegal, or that speaking out against the government puts you in prison, then really, we're no longer a democracy. Whether Britain has truly been a democracy is debatable. I mean, after all, I've always said I'm a monarchist, but not a royalist. I'd rather that the royals got up and do something, but I appreciate the work they're doing at the moment. But this would be happy to live in a kingdom under any of the royals we currently have. But that's the thing. It's the elitism that breeds corruptibility, and that makes governments turn tyrannical, or at the very least less interested. How does this affect Christians? Well, in many ways, because trying to be multicultural doesn't necessarily mean we need to remove the culture we already have, or just blot out a culture that we think is too strong. Something that was flagged on a Christian radio station just the other day was an NHS worker who wears a cross around her neck, nothing wrong with that, yet she was asked to remove it or hide it, whilst the NHS claim it was for health and safety reasons. People have looked into it, and they all wear lanyards which are more likely to get caught on stuff, and they don't break away apparently, than that cross on a chain. So really, it's almost considered an attack on Christianity. Now, I don't like the fact that people often say, oh, this is an attack on our culture, and stuff like that, and I'm not saying that's the case. when you're trying to defend your decision on grounds that just don't match up with what you currently have, it's less effective than you might think. It's, how can I put it? It's a bit like saying you're driving along a road, a cyclist was in front of you, and you hit them. It's not your fault. You were driving along, you didn't have your lights on, it was pitch dark, he should have been wearing a fluorescent strip. Yeah, but you should have had your lights on as well. The attempt to justify it just didn't work. Now it is worthwhile expanding into other cultures, being a multicultural nation. And it's also worthwhile showing that true British culture isn't just plain racist. And that's often the case you hear the truly racist people actually put forwards. They say that the people that aren't expressing that particular viewpoint, they're not of that nation. I remember watching a clip from the old American programme, What Would You Do? And it was a scenario where a Muslim woman was being denied service, and the response was split right down the middle. Half were being defensive, defending her, insisting that she get service. The other half were defending the shop owner who was refusing her service, and even saying that anyone who doesn't deny that woman service isn't American. Which is, quite frankly, horrifying. And you hear that in many places in Britain even. I mean, a far-right political group tried to take power back in the day. I haven't really heard from them much, so clearly they haven't succeeded. But they were called Britain's First, and their justification was that it put British people first. However, one thing you've got to remember is that Britain... Sorry, someone just drove into my lane. Nutter. Okay, where was I? Yeah. You have to remember that Britain, as a culture, is more mixed than a great deal of other cultures. And in fact, America is built on that. Because for literally every single aspect of British history was imported almost. The Celts, they were the first settlers of Britain. Then there were the Romans who came to invade. Aspects of Roman culture still remain, even in our language. The Saxons, they hung around for a bit. Then it was the Vikings barging in, taking over much of the north. That's why we've got Jorvik, the Jorvik Museum. And then we had the Normans barge in, and that's why some people say, pardon my Saxon, when we use curse words, even though, strictly speaking, we wouldn't know any of them. And that also resulted in the language shift, which meant we call the meat of animals different to the animal themselves. I know it sounds like a stereotypical Englishman complaining that everything is blamed on foreigners, which is partly true. But the fact we claim it's all us is just rubbish. Don't get me wrong, Britain did do quite a lot. But the fact is, international policy in recent years has been trying to stick its oar in to every single conflict. And even, quite recently, cut off all international affairs, namely Brexit, which totally backfired. Hence why we had the fuel crisis. It just shows we're not very good as people. Now, whilst I have, in my book, written a branch of the Catholic Church which is very much based in the kingdoms of Albion, and sees it as the highest point that anyone can rise to. I'm still not blind to the fact that Britain is a great country. We are bloody stupid, to be honest. It doesn't help that lying seems to be a large part of politics these days. Something was actually noted by someone trying to say that because of that, just saying that only liars will be thrown to a pit of sulphur at the end of time is clearly marking us as completely evil, whilst rapists, murderers and so forth get to live on, or whatever, or at least get ignored. Unfortunately, that quote from Revelation was clearly cut short, because the rest of that quote, in fact the bit before the bit he was quoting, mentioned sexually immoral people, which does include rapists. So why he just mentioned the liars is completely beyond me. Ultimately, being aware of cancel culture is much better than claiming it doesn't exist. Trying to cancel it out doesn't really work. Should we be allowed to express our opinions? Well, the fact that we can talk means we should have the right to express it. Granted, some of our words may hurt people, but if we don't stir things up, we don't change things. That is the thing we have to remember. Jesus did not come in and smooth the ground. No, he shook things up. He stepped in. He basically told off the Jews, the Pharisees. He said, yeah, you got the right idea, but you bent it a bit. So I'm just going to clarify a few things. I'm not changing the law. You're the one who changed the laws. I'm here to correct them. And that's why he emphasised love far more than anything else. That's why he was practical on the Sabbath. I know I push that quite a lot, but really, when you get right down to it, that is Jesus through and through. I normally don't like getting politics on this channel, and likewise I don't want to get religion mixed up in day-to-day life. But being able to express oneself in your displeasure of what's going on, in your attempts to change things, or simply expressing your religious views, even if it's just in a small way, by saying, yes, I'm going to church this weekend, do you want to join me? Or asking, are you religious at all? Because I would very much like to pray for you. The the difference between being open about one's faith and ramming it down someone's throat. It could say it's the difference between shaving someone and cutting their throat. One is being kind, gentle and supportive. The other is, well, to say the very least, unhealthy. Hopefully I'll put this video up soon. But until then, stay safe. Don't be afraid to express your opinion. Like I say, if you want to, leave your thoughts in the comments below. I'm always open to them. So, just remember, be open, and be honest with yourself as well. Because often, we start lying to people because we're not being honest with ourselves. If you're not happy with the situation, just mention it. Discuss it. Find a way round. Thank you. Stay safe, my friends.